Hey guys, thanks so much for tuning in to my third episode here. Hopefully you got a chance to look at the last one from Sensoji Temple located in Yokosuka, Japan. I had some fun packaging that together for you. I really adore Japan. This episode we are heading to Mexico. I truly adore Mexico, specifically because of the season I choose to visit. I live in Cabo, where in December it's always cold, wet, and rainy, sometimes snowy, possibly, not really, but wet and rainy for sure. So escaping to Mexico has always been something to look forward to. I love it for the beaches and the warm weather. Both times I went, I think I had maybe 1 or 2 gloomy days, but in December the weather is fine. I went to Cabo as well, where the water wasn't as blue. Cancun is more on the Caribbean side, where Cabo showcases more of the Pacific Ocean. That's one thing when I went to Cancun, I was a little bummed. But I should have known that looking on the map. You know, it's on completely opposite sides of the map facing different seas. If you want the blue water, go to Cancun. If you want ocean and don't really care, you know, you have options. But if you're looking for that blue water, so far I can tell you to go to Cancun over Cabo. I had an awesome time in Mexico. I literally love tacos. Like carne asada is one of my favorites, and it's so cheap. The conversion rate is totally worth it. Just going on, you know, you can go on a budget to Mexico. I'm not saying don't go with any money, because you never know what happens, but you can definitely extend your dollar in Mexico. So how did I get there? My friend and I both had our passports. That's one thing you do need. If you don't have your passport, I would do it at least 3 months in advance, because it takes about a month for you to receive your passport. And I booked my flight. At the time I was working for Alaska Airlines, and we had received tickets through ID90. So if you're familiar with what airline, I booked my tickets through an airline website, third party. So with it, as well as the hotel, I recommend looking at Priceline, preferably Priceline. You can find some really good deals, and keep in mind that a lot of those prices don't include resort fees. So add about 30 to 35, maybe even more, depending on which type of hotel you want to stay at. But don't forget to include the resort fees in your overall price, because sometimes it's hidden and it kind of sneaks up on you. And so yeah, we booked our hotel, we booked our flight, and it was nonstop on Alaska Airlines, one of my favorites. And it took us straight to Cancun, no stops, no nothing. Of course, you gotta go through customs and immigration. Depending on the time, it could be long, but ours went fairly fast. Like when you get there, you see a long line that's overwhelming, but they're so organized and it goes extremely fast. I was quite surprised. And as soon, you know, you get to the airport and you go through the doors, and people have tons of information about transportation, taxis. If you're worried about that, you can wait to get to your destination to find a taxi. However, it's a lot easier, like I always stress, to be prepared and to do your research. We shared the shuttle. It was about $30 with other tourists that were traveling, and I kind of like that. I like sharing the shuttle. I know it's like some people want their own space, but you're able to engage in conversations and maybe learn something on the way to your hotel that you didn't know about your destination. So we did share a shuttle with someone else. However, you still pay the $30 per person. Definitely wanted to make sure that our taxi was booked and ready when we got there. When we got to the airport, we had cash and we did our exchange at the airport. At your resort, most places have the convenience of exchanging your money. Do your research. For me at the time, the airport had the best exchange rate as far as pesos, so we went ahead and exchanged most of our US dollars to pesos at the airport. But however, we did have the opportunity to do it at the resort as well. Recommend booking further out, because you can book a round trip to Cancun for $200 to $250. And I know that sounds bizarre because it's out of the country, but it's true. If you do it right, you can find it. Let's see what else. And just keep in mind, if you're traveling with someone, you can always split the cost. I wanted to stay at a resort this time because I wanted the food and the drinks included. You know, when you hear that, you get excited. However, I learned that by the 4th day of staying at the resort, I was over the food. I was learning that food was much cheaper around Cancun. So I mentioned the party life. Cancun to me was full of people who were just at the resort wanting to party. Very few families, more so young people. We started to see the same people out in the clubs that we met. This one group of people, it was about 4 of them, and they became our Cancun friends. So it was really cool that we also learned that they stayed at the same hotel. Cabo, my trip for Cancun was totally different. I think when I went to Cancun, it was more of a party vibe, more so have a good time, because I stayed in an airBnB in a town or like downtown. It was more so kind of just get out and explore and kind of adventure and see what you can get into. It wasn't so much going down to Cancun, and it was a lot more clubs and party life in neighborhoods and churches and a lot of like small businesses, and then the ocean was like down the way, which I really liked. I know I wanted to save that for later, but as far as resort life and airBnB life, traveling, especially in Mexico, I choose airBnB life. I'd rather be around locals. I'd rather hear the language, hear the sounds. I know it's loud in some places, but I don't mind. I take advantage of the opportunity to really get to see what it's like. So I definitely prefer staying in an airBnB where I can walk outside and, you know, go get a bite to eat from a stand or a small restaurant on the corner for like $5, rather than staying in a resort where there's Americans everywhere. You kind of have a relaxed and a more party vibe, because everyone is going there for leisure and going there to either party or relax. And I like to be adventurous. I like to just get up and go and see what I can find and see what's different other than what, you know, my eyes are used to. So I much prefer, and every time I go back to Mexico, I definitely choose the airBnB. My host in Cabo was amazing. He has so many amenities that were convenient to us that just made the experience even more enjoyable. He gave us tips. So I had fun in Cancun. I enjoyed the resort. However, I don't suggest staying in a resort unless you really are going to party or really going to relax in a leisure setting. I don't care to see the power dynamics of just Americans going there for leisure or to party, and then seeing the locals working and kind of being around what I'm used to, and then having to deal with American food being just offered. I don't want to see it. I came to Mexico for some tacos, so that's why I'm there. And that's just my opinion. I'm sure everyone has their own, but from Jasmine Chanel, I prefer just staying in an airBnB where you have the more cultural feel and the more community and more everyday life feel than a resort. So I definitely recommend, if you're planning to travel to Cancun, travel in advance. Start preparing sooner than later. You can find really good deals on flights and places to stay as far as resorts, airBnB. It's always cheaper the further out you do it. And make sure you have your passport. If you can make your money stretch in Mexico, I highly recommend it in a season that wherever you're at, you have cold weather. That way it's kind of an escape and it's rewarding. Yeah, enjoy your time in Cancun. I love the water, I love the ocean. One thing I didn't mention just yet, be prepared. There are, you know, if you know about Mexico, I felt safe in Cancun just because I know that's another aspect that people are worried about. I do remember being offered drugs like every 5 minutes when you're walking down the street. Someone is either coming up to you whispering cocaine, offering you drugs all the time, either walking by like, and you know they're soliciting drugs. So I would say they're very pushy. The thing that broke my heart about Mexico is the children. It is a little devastating. You see children up all time of night, 1 a.m., 2 a.m., all the way to like 4 a.m. because I was out and you know, you go and get a bite to eat and children are coming up to you trying to sell you hand beaded bracelets, anything from necklaces, just all types of little charms. You know, mothers are out with signs asking for money and children are right there with them. Really devastating to see. Something that I know that I'm going to see when I go to Mexico. And you know, for us, my friend and I, when we went out, we offered the children food, we fed them, and children didn't even care about anything. I guess they kind of looked over their shoulder, hoping not to get in trouble, or maybe just looking around. But children like came from all over, and we're just, you know, you want to help out so much. And for us, we just bought a dish of food, and the kids came, and once one kid saw, you know, that there was food, just kids came from everywhere, and it was really devastating. At the moment, that's how I felt that I could give back, was to feeding the children. So be aware of that. That will change your perspective, and it's really devastating to see. An interesting part of our trip was be careful and do your research as far as like where you're heading. One time we got in a taxi and the guy was going around circles, and I had already knew the route because we had went on a similar route on the bus. And so he was supposed to be taking us one direction, but he was going totally opposite. And I told the taxi driver, you know, you're going the wrong, I see what you're doing, let us out. So my friend and I luckily he pulled on the side of the road. We got out in the middle of nowhere. My friend was scared, but I was like, on the count of 3, you better get out of here. Because I was aware prior to that he was going either the opposite route to keep the meter running, probably what he was doing. But know your routes in Mexico. Just anywhere, people can take advantage of the lack of knowledge and take advantage of, you know, using you for extra funds. And that was, like I said, I noticed the route. He was going the opposite way. I told him to let us out. We got out, and immediately another taxi came, which I knew would happen because I seen where taxis were everywhere. So one pulled up, and this guy was extremely nice, and I was a little not shaken, but like worried because all the stories you hear about Mexico, and I knew this guy was taking advantage of us, and we had to get out of that situation. But luckily, you know, when we got in the car, the next taxi driver, the first question I asked him after he asked us, you know, oh, where are you from? Which I always say Canada, because I feel like Trump just made it difficult. So for a neutral understanding, I'm from Canada when I go to Mexico. And what was I gonna say? Oh, so I was a little shaken up by that whole situation, and now we're in another taxi, and the first thing I asked him was, do you have children? And he said, yes, I have 4. And I'm like, okay, well, at least this guy, you know, has kids and has empathy for, you know, life. You would think if he had kids, I don't know, El Chapo. Okay, we will get into that. But anywho, and so he was a very nice guy. We told him what happened. I wanted him to know that we're aware of our surroundings, and we might not speak the language, but we know where we're supposed to go, what directions we're supposed to go. And he was very kind. So don't take that story and think that something can happen to you. There are great people. He took us to the bathroom. Of course, with all the tequila shots, we had to use the restroom at some point. And so, yeah, just be aware of your surroundings, because you can get taken advantage of if you're not paying attention. But luckily, like the second taxi driver, you have someone that will come and redeem that negative thought or that negative perception that might have happened if you would have been left off with that bad story. So luckily, it turned around for us, and the guy gave us great conversation and gave us great advice on how to travel. One thing I wasn't aware of, at gas stations, the restrooms aren't free. You have to pay to use the restrooms, 1 peso. And I left the restroom, and the lady was like, peso? And I'm looking at her like, I'm confused. And so I just gave it to her, but the taxi driver reiterated like, yes, you pay. And I did see a sign stating that. However, I kind of like bypassed it, just going and needing to go to the restroom. You know how, after tequila, you just need to go. You don't even care, just where's it at? So I was at that point, and yeah, so public restrooms aren't free everywhere. Have some change, pesos in your pocket to pay for those restroom visits. I know Europe was like that too. So downtown Cancun is pretty similar to Vegas. It's like a strip of outdoor vendors. You have restaurants everywhere, big colors, lots of colors, Senior Frog, just like Vegas. That's a place that I always go into when I know I want to be, because it's pretty common in the States, so I feel like people are familiar, so they tend to go to places that they're familiar with. So I always find some cool people in Senior Frog. So we stayed right by our resorts were a number of other resorts, so I felt like we were a little secluded from the city. And Cancun, we had to take a taxi, which was about 10 every time we wanted to go to Cancun. But however, by the 4th day, we started taking the bus, which was really fun. Don't forget to hop on fast, because it is not a joke. The driver does not wait for you to sit down, like I mentioned. And yeah, so yeah, with being around other resorts, I kind of didn't like that. I want to be in the midst of everything and kind of be able to walk into stores if I wanted to, or go get a bite to eat at one restaurant. And yeah, so on my next episode, we're gonna look at Cabo, and I want to just give you some tips, some more bargain tips, and to show you my airBnB adventure, my airBnB experience, which I truly love. I stayed in 2 different places in Cabo, and both hosts were amazing, gave me great tips, and made my stay so much more enjoyable, and gave me so much more information rather than me just being on my own, you know, because they live there every day. They're from there, so what better way to experience a new place than someone who's lived there all their life and knows the ins and outs. They can give you tips. And yeah, so I really appreciate the airBnB a lot better than the resort. However, Cancun waters were so beautifully blue that I rather just drift in Cancun on the waters, in the Caribbean side of the waters instead of the Pacific side, but that's okay. That was video number 3. Thanks so much for your views, for tuning in. Don't forget to subscribe. That was Cancun, Mexico. The next one will be going into Cabo. I'm having a lot of fun doing these videos. I hope you get some insight and some tips, something that you weren't aware of before you knew about these destinations. Yeah, so subscribe, ask questions, leave comments, send love. And until next time, it's your girl Jasmine Chanel giving you Cancun, Mexico. And yeah, that's it. Buenas noches.